first sound was the low growl of an engine outside, the kind of noise that makes the windows vibrate before you even see what's there. I set my coffee mug on the counter and wiped my hands on a dish towel, half expecting a delivery truck or a utility crew. But when I stepped to the door, it was Caleb's truck, big, rented, the kind movers use. Behind it, Jana's SUV idled at the curb, hazard lights blinking like a warning. They didn't ring the bell. The two of them climbed out with the urgency of people on a deadline, rolling out straps and a dolly as if they'd rehearsed. Jana had a clipboard in one hand, a ball cap pulled low over her perfect hair. Caleb wouldn't even look at me. "Hi, sweetheart," I started to say, but Jana's voice cut through mine. "We'll start with the big ones." She was already in my kitchen, scanning my appliances like she was in a showroom. Caleb followed her in, eyes on the floor. "It's for our new place," he muttered, reaching for the plug behind the refrigerator. "You won't need these anymore." The motor gave a soft whine as he yanked the cord free. Frosted air escaped when the door fell open, my milk still inside. He grabbed it, pushed the door shut, and motioned to Jana. I stood rooted to the tile dish towel still in my hand. The house felt suddenly smaller, like all the air had been pulled out. Jana pointed to the stove next, then the washer, speaking fast about measurements and space. Neither of them asked if it was all right. Neither of them even said please. I tried to form words, questions, protests, but my throat tightened. I only heard the clatter of dollies, the scrape of metal on linoleum, the voices of my son and his wife moving through my kitchen as though I wasn't there. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the truck's engine outside as they rolled my refrigerator through the doorway, and the silence that followed felt like the start of something I couldn't yet name, but already knew would change everything. I had set out 2 clean mugs that morning, one for Caleb, one for Jana. I even reheated the coffee and sliced some banana bread still soft from yesterday. I thought we'd sit on the porch like we used to, maybe talk about the new baby they'd been hoping for, or the small fixer-upper Caleb mentioned over the phone last week. But instead, I watched as the stand mixer disappeared into a cardboard box without a word. It had been a birthday gift from Caleb years ago, the red one I had hinted at after seeing it on sale. I used it every holiday. The toaster followed the chrome, still smudged with fingerprints from this morning's breakfast. Jana didn't look at me as she taped the box shut. She acted like I wasn't there at all. Caleb hovered behind her, carrying things out, not meeting my eyes. His silence was heavier than her orders. I stood by the hallway door, unsure of what I was supposed to do. I'd never been good at confrontation. At the library, I was the one who diffused arguments between teenagers, the one who stayed late to reorganize the shelves no one touched. Even when James died, I didn't cry in front of Caleb. I just folded his shirts, paid the bills, and kept our little life going. Being quiet was how I stayed strong. At least that's what I used to believe. But today felt different. Today, silence wasn't strength. It was something else. It was standing in my own kitchen, watching the people I loved treat my home like a warehouse, my things like giveaways, and feeling like I had disappeared in plain sight. Jana pointed to the slow cooker next. "That'll go in the back seat," she said without pause. Caleb reached for it, his hands brushing past the small calendar I kept beside the sink, still marked with his birthday in red pen. I didn't say a word. But something inside me shifted as I watched them take one more piece of me out the front door. This wasn't the first time. Last fall, Caleb had called Voice Suite and hurried, asking if they could borrow the lawnmower. Just for the weekend, he'd said. I watched him load it into the back of their car, smiling like it meant something that he came himself. I waited a week, then a month. By spring, I'd bought a new one. The vintage jewelry had been harder to forget. My mother's brooches, the ones I kept in a felt-lined box in the bedroom closet, Jana had asked to see them, saying she wanted to borrow something for a party. The box came back empty. She said she'd sold them to help cover costs for her sister's baby shower. I hadn't asked her to replace them. I just folded the box shut and slid it back into the drawer. I told myself it was part of loving someone, letting things go, choosing peace. But today didn't feel like peace. It felt like being erased in slow motion. They weren't borrowing anything. They didn't ask. They didn't explain. They just pointed, packed, and carried. Each item taken felt like another quiet decision made without me, and I stood there again, letting them. Jana pulled open the lower cabinets now. We'll grab these pots, too. The big one's perfect for chili. Caleb nodded. Mom hasn't used them in years. That wasn't true. I'd made stew just last week. But correcting him felt pointless. He turned to grab the dish rack, the one James made me from cedar before he died. For a moment, I thought he'd hesitate. His hand slowed, hovered over it like he remembered. But then he took it. I stepped back away from the kitchen entirely. I didn't know what would happen if I stayed in that room. I didn't know what would come out of me, rage or grief or something worse. So I walked to the front room, sat down on the edge of the armchair, and watched the light dim as clouds rolled in through the window, while the sound of taking continued behind me. I used to wear my wedding ring even after James passed. I liked the weight of it, the way it grounded me when I felt alone. But when Caleb called, panicked about losing his spot in the graduate program, I didn't hesitate. I took the ring to the jeweler 2 towns over and handed it across the counter without flinching. The tuition deadline was that Friday. He never knew what I sold to help him make it. He just thanked me. Voice rushed, distracted already thinking about exams. Later that year, he cracked a molar and didn't have insurance. I spent 3 nights hunched over my sewing machine taking in blouses for a woman in town. The money barely covered the surgery, but I made it work. I always made it work. And when Jana called crying after she lost her job, I drove 3 hours through sleet to drop off groceries. I remember the look on her face, more embarrassed than grateful. Still, I unpacked everything, stocked her cabinets, and left quietly before dinner. I haven't taken a vacation since James died. I patched my winter boots with glue instead of buying new ones. Skipped the heater upgrade when the inspector warned me the system was old. Also, they could have 1 more month of comfort, 1 more step forward. And now here they are stripping my kitchen like it's a storage unit. They don't see the sacrifices behind each item. The mixer wasn't just a gift. It was the one luxury I allowed myself that year. The pot's a wedding gift from James's mother. The toaster bought with a refund check from overpaid taxes. None of it is junk. None of it is free. But to them, I suppose it is. Jana walked past me again, arms full, and didn't even pause. Caleb followed, holding the slow cooker, his eyes never once meeting mine. And I sat still, clutching the seam of my sleeve, remembering the years they forgot. The scraping sound of the washer dragging across the linoleum made me flinch. Caleb struggled with the weight, while Jana barked directions from the door. He grunted as it tipped forward, onto the dolly. His back hunched, his wedding ring flashing under the porch light. That's when I saw her, Mrs. Claiborne, across the street, standing in her driveway with a grocery bag in hand. Her expression shifted the moment our eyes met. She crossed over slowly, hesitantly, the way someone approaches a wounded animal. "Lorinda?" she said gently, her eyes scanning the truck. "Everything okay?" Before I could open my mouth, Jana stepped in. "We're helping Mom declutter," she said with that practiced laugh she used at baby showers and fundraisers. She insisted. The smile never touched her eyes. I forced my face into something close to a nod. Mrs. Claiborne lingered, eyes narrowing ever so slightly, before she murmured something about dinner in the oven and walked back across the street. The washer disappeared into the truck. Jana wiped her hands on her leggings and pulled out her phone. "We'll be back tomorrow morning," she called over her shoulder. Might as well take care of the rest while we're at it. By the time the tail lights faded, the kitchen felt hollow. There was space where the machines used to hum. The tile was dusty, exposed. I didn't bother to sweep it. I ate a piece of toast, standing up the silence thick around me. Later that evening, just after the sun dipped behind the trees, there was a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, Mrs. Claiborne stood there with a warm casserole dish and eyes full of something I couldn't name. Concern, maybe, or recognition. She handed me the dish and said quietly, "I wasn't sure if you'd cook tonight." I opened the door wider without a word. As I set the casserole on the counter, she hesitated. "Lorinda, I need to ask, did you know your stove was listed for sale? I saw the post. That backsplash yours is the only one in town with that color tile." Mrs. Claiborne's words stayed with me long after she left. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty space where the stove had been, the casserole cooling untouched beside me. The post online wasn't a mistake. It was proof. Proof that this wasn't decluttering or moving favors. It was theft. And it was planned. I reached for the small folder tucked into the drawer near my chair. Inside were copies of letters, receipts, and a contract from my attorney. Last month, after a second break-in on our street, I'd quietly done what no one thought I would. I met with my lawyer. We updated my will, insured the appliances and furniture, and filed the documentation in a place where Caleb would never think to look. I'd also installed a small camera above the front door. Nothing obvious, just enough to catch the driveway and the kitchen entry. Every movement, every box, every appliance leaving my home was recorded, time-stamped, and automatically uploaded to a secure cloud account. Even if they took the camera down, the files would still exist. I had learned long ago that yelling rarely changed anything. When James died, when bills piled up, when Caleb came home with empty promises, I'd survived by planning ahead, not by making noise. Now, as I sat in the hollow kitchen, I felt the old instinct return. I didn't need to confront them. Not yet. I didn't need to shout or accuse. I only needed to be ready. I called my attorney, voice steady. "It's happening," I said simply. He told me to sit tight and not to stop them. "Let the record speak for itself," he said. So I did. I brewed my coffee, locked the folder back in its place, and waited. They thought they were stripping me down to nothing, but they had no idea what I'd already built around myself. And as I heard the truck engine return down the street, I knew I had reached the edge of my silence. They said they'd be back in the morning to finish. Said it casually, like it was an errand, like they hadn't already gutted half my home. I nodded, offered no resistance, just held the door as they carried out what once belonged to me. That night, I moved quietly through the house. The silence had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was clear, cold, steady. I gathered the few things that still mattered. My wedding album. A photo of Caleb at 5 years old, missing a front tooth and holding a wooden train James had carved. The rosary my mother gave me before she passed. I placed them gently in a canvas tote and locked them in the small closet behind the hallway mirror. I changed the locks on the shed out back, the one where James's tools still hung in perfect rows. The new padlock clicked shut like punctuation. I updated the security alerts on my phone, double-checked the battery backup on the camera, and uploaded one final copy of the footage to my lawyer's drive. Then I sat at the kitchen table, the only table still left, and wrote a single note. I didn't rewrite it. I didn't need to. "I hope your buyers enjoy the items. My insurance company will be in touch." I folded it once, placed it on the counter where the toaster used to be, and turned off the lights. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because something deeper than sadness had settled in me now. Not anger, either, just clarity. I slept with the window open, the cool air washing over me, like something had finally been aired out. I didn't dream. I didn't need to. When I woke, I heard the truck before I saw it. They were back, just like they said. But this time, I didn't rise to meet them. I stayed by the window, coffee in hand, and waited for them to step through the gate. I didn't open the door when they knocked. They weren't there to talk. They were here to finish what they started this time for the wall clock in the hallway, the old microwave in the pantry, and the painting James had done of the lake where we used to take Caleb fishing. I watched from behind the curtain as they parked the truck like they owned the place. Caleb climbed out first, unlocking the ramp in the back. Jana followed, clipboard in hand, ponytail, bouncing like it was just another Saturday. But then they stopped. At the foot of the driveway sat a sheriff's cruiser angled slightly across the gravel engine, running. The deputy stepped out calmly and said Caleb's name. Asked for a moment of their time. Jana shifted her weight, already defensive arms folded tight. But the deputy wasn't there for debate. There's been a report of unauthorized removal and sale of insured property, he said. We have reason to believe these items were taken without consent from the homeowner. Caleb stammered. It's my mom's house. She said it was fine. The deputy turned slightly toward the house, then looked back. We have footage that shows otherwise. He held up a tablet and hit play. The screen showed them clear as day, wheeling out my refrigerator, unplugging my stove-stacking labeled boxes. Jana blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. Caleb's hands dropped to his sides. He didn't look up. They both just stood there. Not yelling, not defending, just frozen in place like someone had paused them mid-step. I stayed inside. I didn't need to step into that moment. It wasn't mine anymore. As the deputy continued speaking, Jana turned her head toward the porch, maybe looking for me, maybe realizing I'd never come out. I sat down in the chair by the window and took a sip of coffee. The clock on the wall kept ticking steady and slow, as if nothing had ever been taken at all. The phone started ringing before noon. The next day, Caleb's name flashing on the screen again and again. I let it go to voicemail each time. After the third call, my attorney emailed to say he'd already spoken with Caleb's lawyer and that everything would be handled formally from now on. I typed a short reply, "Thank you," and closed the laptop. The house was quiet, but it was no longer hollow. It was mine again. Every sound belonged to me. The ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the small heater in the corner, even the creak of the floorboards when I walked to the kitchen. No voices telling me what they'd take next. No engine idling outside. Mrs. Claiborne stopped by mid-afternoon carrying a basket lined with a clean towel. "Fresh muffins," she said softly, placing them on the counter where my toaster used to sit. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have to. Her eyes lingered on mine for a moment, and then she patted my hand and left. I made tea, sat at the bare table, and bit into one of the muffins. The taste was warm, sweet, almost unfamiliar after months of stress. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small piece of my appetite return. Later, I dragged my favorite armchair into the kitchen where the appliances had stood. The empty space felt like a blank page, and I angled the chair toward the window so I could watch the street while I read. I stacked a few books nearby, the ones I'd been saving for someday when I had time. I didn't miss the refrigerator or the stove. I didn't miss the noise of the washing machine. What I missed was the version of Caleb who used to sit at this table with homework spread out, the boy who told me his dreams and reached for my hand. I turned the page of my book slowly, the words blurring for a moment, and then straightened my back, knowing there was still one more thing I needed to do before this chapter of my life was truly closed. It took me 3 weeks to decide what to do with the old dining table. The chairs had scratches from Caleb's school shoes, and one leg still wobbled from James trying to fix it with a folded playing card. I ran my hand over the surface one last time before calling the women's shelter. They came the next morning, polite and grateful, and loaded it into their van like it was something precious. Maybe to someone else it would be. I stood at the porch and watched it drive away without feeling hollow. That table held memories. But not all memories need to be held onto forever. I ordered a compact fridge just enough for one. It arrived in a plain box with no fanfare, but it slid perfectly into the corner where the old one stood. I kept the washer, not out of sentiment, but practicality. Some things still served me, and that was enough. I changed my emergency contact form at the clinic to Mrs. Claiborne. She didn't ask when I handed her the envelope. She simply nodded, tucked it into her purse, and said, "Of course, dear." Then I walked into town, opened a new checking account at a bank where no one knew my last name. I didn't move my money out of fear. I moved it out of clarity. There's a difference between protecting yourself and hiding. I wasn't hiding anymore. The house is quieter now, not because things are missing, but because it finally feels like it's holding space, just for me. I light a candle at night. I keep the front door locked. I sleep better. As for Caleb and Jana, I never blocked them. Their numbers still sit in my phone untouched. But I don't answer. I don't reach out. They're not cut off. They're just no longer invited in. Some people think boundaries come with shouting or slammed doors. But for me, it came with silence, with small decisions, with choosing over and over not to let them take one more piece of me. Not my stove, not my name, not my peace.